So welcome to the Moonello Show.
Pretty much. Yeah, what is today's episode about?
I don't know.
Okay. So I think today we are going to cover AI regulations. And the real big question, why hasn't the U.S. really created any laws about AI or surrounding AI? They've got a whole lot of other things to talk about surrounding technologies that we use, but not so much AI yet.
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I don't know. Are we going to go down this path? Or are we going to go down this path? Red pill, blue pill? Conspiracy Jason, or...
That's why I picked this topic.
Could we do red pill with a little bit of blue pill along the way?
Okay, all right. I'll sprinkle some in as we go.
That is 100% why this topic was picked. Me and you went on a tangent outside of the podcast, and I was like, podcast episode, got it.
Yep. And then I forgot the entire tangent. You created the outline, and then I had to re-study what I had said.
So welcome
that's
to the
the
Jason.
process.
Welcome to the Jason Show. Wow.
We're renaming the podcast today. Okay, so regulations. What do they look like today? Federally, big goose egg.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
What about a duck egg?
Could be a duck egg too.
Okay.
Could be an ostrich egg if you're really feeling fancy. Those are gigantic.
Those are.
It's like head-sized.
That still means that there's no regulations.
Right. Zero is zero, right?
Yeah.
0.0?
0.0. Repeating.
But state regulations, those are there.
There are state regulations going on, but like the ones that I had found, for example, there's a California Assembly Bill 302 or something, and it's literally just saying that the government is setting up a process to track how they are using AI in their different processes, and then in 2025 they're going to publish a report about it every year. So it's not even like how companies can use it, how can we protect people, families, jobs, that sort of thing. It's just like, how are we using it, and what's the impact that it's having on our stuff?
Like barely scratching the surface on building some type of regulation.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like exploratory at this point.
But AI has been around forever, pretty much.
Well, I mean, not for forever, but
longer than you've been alive.
The thought of AI has been around for longer than I've been alive. So like AI, the thought of AI started with science fiction way back in the day, before like modern computers really existed. And then like 1940s, 1950s, before I was alive, before any of us were alive, that's when computing got to the point where, there were actual computers, and people started to think, well, if we have, a box that uses electrical signals to make decisions and compute ones and zeros and stuff like that, what says if we get enough time and research that we can't simulate more complex things? Like, I don't know, a brain that uses electrical signals to make decisions and run processes and stuff. So like, it's always been in the minds of people, but like recently, 2010s or so, it's really come into the public as like a thing that can actually happen and is actually happening. And then obviously the last 2 years have just exploded, and everything is AI. You're using AI even if you don't know that you're using AI, like you had brought up in our conversation before the podcast started.
Probably should tell them how AI is being used then and everything, whether they might know it or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because like we don't even know everything that AI is doing.
Right.
No.
So like AI is...
Plus how often it's changing.
Yeah. Like every day there's something new, like
Siri.
GPT 4.0 or whatever just came
Right.
out yesterday, and it's brand new thing, which that is a thing that they had been working on for forever. So like 2 years ago when AI first came out, we're like, oh, okay, or ChatGPT or whatever first came out, you can like type in stuff and it's gonna give you back a bunch of text about it. Had no idea that 2 years later we're gonna get this technology that we can basically talk to like we would Siri or Google. And I'm sorry if I set off all of your Siris and Googles.
I love
we all
when
checked our phones.
I love when I'm sitting back and producing these videos or just listening to them before we get them published, right? And then the G word comes across the audio, and my phone lights up and everything.
Well, I think that's what it is. It's Siri, it's Google, whatever, Google Home or whatever it's called.
Google Assistant.
Google Assistant.
It's in your maps and Waze and all that. It's
Yeah.
in everything.
Banks and financial district things are using it to, find fraud or detect fraud because, the computer can think way faster than a human can, process a bunch of different documents. So if you train an AI to recognize the patterns of fraud, then they're going to be able to find most of that, or at least the very common, like easier to detect fraud way quicker than a human shuffling through files on a computer or something like that.
Or a server admin sitting here watching logs on a server. Yeah.
So it's used in a lot of places, but there's no regulation on it yet.
Right, which is a little scary.
Yeah, especially because I remember reading, even back in the day when it was first being thought of, people are like, okay, this can be huge, but there needs to be a regulation on it.
Yeah, I mean, when they first started thinking about it, it was more like the old we can but should we type of a thing. There were ethical concerns around it, but now, like, it's just it's without regulation telling us we should think about the ethical concerns. People are just gonna, well, we can, so we should. Like, we should always be pioneering, straightforward. Nothing is holding us back right now, and that gets a little bit scary. When you kind of think about it, like, how far can they go before it's too late? Before a government wouldn't be able to step in and say, no, you can't do that. The damage might already be done. AI might already be shooting missiles at an enemy or something like that. Not to get a little. Yeah. That kind of reminds me. You had done a talk somewhere about practical applications of AI.
Oh yeah.
And then there was a Q&A after you guys had talked about your thing, and the only thing people brought up were like these really high level, like, war games, like, AI is going to take over, and we're like, the title was practical AI, usable in your life relative to you right now, AI, not like these things that we're talking about. So,
and people were worrying about like modern day Star Wars, just
which is a concern.
In the sky,
but that's not what you were talking about.
No.
I feel like you've also been in situations where you've been on a call and there was it's called like the note taker AI or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And people were freaking out.
Oh yeah.
Because they think that everyone's listening, and you're like, sir, calm down.
Yep.
I mean, it's like, and this kind of feeds into something we'll talk about a little bit later, but there's a lack of general understanding in the general populace about what AI is, what it can do, how it does what it does, and that sort of thing. So while those concerns are valid in the right spots, in the right places, the minute you mention AI to someone who isn't on the up and up about like the basics of AI, that instills like a fear of the unknown, and suddenly they want to avoid it like the plague. Like,
that's a good point.
Your situation.
Yep.
I think that's what we're here to do, is teach people that it's here. It's nothing to be scary about, but there's no regulations on it.
Yeah.
I disagree. There is something to be scared about.
Well,
there
tomato, tomato.
Well, there really hasn't been anything that's come out that's been like, AI has like destroyed a portion of the earth, or like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing that's like that we know of, that we're aware of, that we haven't seen in mainstream media.
But
you're right.
We don't know, because there are no regulations. We don't know what those companies are doing or are able to do. So who knows, like, that there isn't some company developing something for a country to use to implement into their military, decision making. Right? We don't know that. We don't know that an American company isn't doing that and then selling it to whoever will buy it, right?
That would be
Conspiracy
an interesting.
theories. Jason is coming in.
That would be an interesting prompt.
Please come up with, and like, ChatGPT and Google Gemini, like the product that we get has a bunch of safeguards, but with enough money, you can buy a product that doesn't have those safeguards built in. So while we can't create real life war games, hack into the Pentagon and press the big red button, who's to say that somebody else's can't, because they've paid enough for it?
Right.
Well, you know what grinds my
Tinfoil hat.
gears?
What grinds your gears?
Thank you for asking,
Let's
Matt.
hear it.
Is that a Family Guy reference? Because I love it. It is a Family Guy reference,
whether
whether she knows it or not.
Yep.
I don't know it. there's no federal regulations on this, but there's starting to become regulations on my favorite app, TikTok.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Bringing this to a screeching halt.
So sorry.
it makes a lot of sense.
It's
no
it's
sense.
Yeah, you're right.
We've
Zero
spent
regulation.
We've spent the last 10 to 20 minutes talking about like real dangers that AI could present in the unknown that we don't know, right? And politicians have not started, maybe they've started, I don't know, but there are no on the books regulations in the federal government saying what can and cannot do
No bills
with
being
AI.
presented.
No bills being
No.
presented that we know of. Maybe there are, but like at least there's nothing on the books right now that exists as a law, right? And for real threats and real dangers that could be happening with AI. But then there's this big uproar about a technology that we use that could have a link, does have a link, but could have a negative impact on us and our information going to something that we consider a threat, China.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And all of a sudden that gets front and center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then
It's
doesn't that
weird.
go back into like full circle of, because TikTok is technically owned by China, and all of the American big business people that are into maybe the pockets of the government or maybe tie into all this don't want regulations on it necessarily quite yet.
Yeah.
And because it will interfere with their business. So the government's like, you got it.
Yeah.
We won't interfere because it's here.
Yeah, and that's
But because TikTok is quote unquote out of our hands, we're going to put a stop to it.
And that goes into why there's been little movement towards making those regulations. It's probably one of the big things. You had mentioned that. You'd also mentioned that there's a general lack of awareness. Like the public has a general lack of awareness. So do politicians.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
most politicians are not technologists. They're not
No.
like they've got advisors that are telling them what all of this means, and they have like the basic understandings of it. But they haven't worked in those sectors. They haven't understood those technologies, those things. It's the same with scientific research. There are barely any scientists in politics. So like that understanding is only gained by talking to experts and then working it through your own lens. And that's kind of one of the failings of politicians in general. But that's one of the reasons there's probably been so little movement. Yeah.
Well, I feel like AI is also, I don't know if this is going completely off topic, but I know.
Probably.
Cool, that's fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
I know AI is not all bad. I know talking with a lot of people about AI in my personal life, people are like, oh my God, it's taking all these jobs. It's taking all these jobs. And I saw a study that said AI is supposedly going to take 800 million jobs, technically. But it's also going to create 900 million jobs.
Yeah.
So it's going to push 100 more million jobs into the fold of things, because AI is taking the mundane work out of what we do in daily life. So us humans have more time to then create bigger and better things. So we're having technology do the stuff that we don't want to do anymore. But
Good
then
point.
I know you made a comment to me a while ago, and it was way back when, we're all farming to make a living and to eat and survive. And we used horse and buggy and manual labor to do that. Well, then along came the tractor, and everyone was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't necessarily take work away from the farmers, but it created more land for the farmers to do, to make more money, to grow.
Made the farmer more efficient.
It shifted industries.
Yeah. So it didn't necessarily take away farmers and what they were doing. It just made their work more doable.
Yeah.
It made them able to go at a bigger scale. So I see AI as, it's not necessarily taking away my job or your job. It's making our jobs a little bit easier so we can take on more. We're able to do more. We're able to think about the bigger picture instead of just worrying about writing the code 00001 a million times on a piece of paper.
For the record, that's not how we code anymore. Sorry.
Flight of the
Some
Conchords told me otherwise.
Some clients think that way, though.
00001. You're right. They do. Actually, they used to do that with punch cards. It wasn't zeros and ones, but like,
Yeah.
that's how you
Yeah.
code. Is you type it out, print it out, and then anyway.
No, I know a little bit of Java. Okay, like
A little bit of Java.
Wait, is it Java? I don't
That's
know.
one of them. Yeah.
What do I know?
Not the one that we use primarily.
HTML. That's what I know.
Oh, yeah.
There we
A little
go.
bit. A little bit.
Yeah.
People
You gotta
on the
open the
internet,
bracket and then you gotta close the bracket.
in the comments, guys.
Yeah.
Is HTML a programming language? Let's start a fight. There's a big contention on whether technically HTML is a programming language.
I built a
kind of just a
website out of it.
markup. Anyway, we won't. That's neither here nor there.
It's a markup language.
Yeah. Anyway, getting kind of back to the topic, the whole horse thing, like that happened with the auto industry too. So like everybody used, or a lot of people used horses for their, faster transportation.
Yeah.
And then these cars came out, and all of a sudden, like people who trained horses, people who owned the horses, people who, did all that stuff, all of those people were going to get pushed out of work. And like in the short term, probably, right?
Yep.
They probably did lose their business. In the long term, though, more jobs, more ability to make money was created in the auto industry, which
More
is
trade.
arguably top 3 industries in the United States, top 2 industries in the United States is the auto industry. So people are afraid to change. They're afraid of the shift, and it is scary because people will lose their jobs in the short term. But you just got to pivot, I guess. I don't know.
You can phase it in. You can use it to augment your job.
Yeah, that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's big concern with software developers that AI is going to basically like take all of the junior and mid-range software developers away. Those developers who use that technology are the ones who are going to keep going forward, and then the ones who don't are the ones that will be left by the wayside. So,
But then
or you could just pivot and become a podcast co-host,
Yep.
which is what I'm doing.
And we're glad to have you, Jason.
Thanks.
or you can have flip that coin over and say all those people who aren't on the entry level can use AI as a jumping point, because you still need that human element. You do. Even Google is saying, you can do a whole bunch of stuff with AI, but we're not going to necessarily do a lot, like necessarily index your page or like do a lot of stuff if you're not going to add your human element, because AI is everywhere and we're not going to feed that to everyone because that's just common knowledge. You need to have your own human element and own fun and everything else to make that a step further. So lawyers, they're like, well, I can't have my, like, AI can write my proposal. Well, sure, but you still need to go in there and tweak it
And present it.
and everything else.
Make
so,
sure it's plagiarism free. Make sure it
Oh, yeah.
fits your brand and the way that you talk to your clients and stuff like that.
and yes, AI can help with a lot of that and take, hours off your hands helping you create that. But you still need to go in and tweak it and know the craft to do it. So I can have AI write me a a lawyer contract, but I'm not going to know the fine minute details that a lawyer who actually knows the craft can go, wow, do you know how many loopholes are through your contract?
Yeah. This is, we're kind of like uncovering a funny loophole, an ironic loophole that exists in AI. AI is trained to do things. It's modeled, right? And it needs data to learn how to do those things and what to do, right? Where does that data come from?
Us.
Human knowledge, human abilities, human experiences, things that we have done and documented and then fed into the internet, fed into different processes and all that type of stuff. So like AI without the human element couldn't do what it's doing right now.
Correct.
Like it wouldn't be able to do that. And we're kind of creating especially in the internet, we're creating an atmosphere where AI is generating a large bulk of the content, which is then going to be fed into AI for future models. So like we're getting to a point where AI is going to start cycling this information and just rehashing it and like getting almost no new stuff because it's all AI generated in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with that as things progress. I think that had something to do with what you were saying. It might not have.
Yes, it does.
Okay, great.
It's because I'm asking questions specifically tailored to then have you answer them. And
To activate the Jason Center, Hey, did you know I know this fun fact about how much time it takes for light to go from the middle of the sun to outside of the sun?
Oh man,
And my 12 questions.
Real
that
conversation we had the
followed
other day.
he had it within a minute. It was crazy.
Yeah, and I didn't even have to look it up.
And then
So, like
12
light,
questions
right?
that.
So much pressure is happening, and there's so many molecules inside the sun that light is constantly bouncing off of those things inside the sun, and it takes millions of years for it to actually get out of the sun because of how dense and how many bouncings. I don't know what the technical term for that would be. Redirections happen.
I've never been in
all
the
of
sun, so I can't.
processes.
Yeah,
I have. It's not a place you want to be.
got it.
Miss Frizzle took me there. It was a great place.
Yeah, outside of the magic school bus, you don't want to be in the sun. Is
Hey,
the
that was a
general
great thing
consensus.
growing up as a kid, man. Miss Frizzle?
No, I agree.
I wish she was real.
So the last things that we should kind of talk about is what impact would AI regulations have on industries in the United States, maybe abroad, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that, like we said before, a lot of the big business people that live in the U.S. that, are money hungry and create all these AI to, like, my words are lost. What's
Tools and innovations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are feeding into this to grow their own businesses and everything else. So if we're to regulate that, that's regulating a big part of all those one percenters and everything.
That goes into the
Who's
advancements we can make too, right?
Yeah.
So if you put regulations on it, it slows those things down. So it slows down business of the one percenters, which one percenters have a lot of money tied into decisions that are made in the government in the first place. But also it slows down innovation. So things like what ChatGPT is coming or came out with a day or so ago, maybe that doesn't come out for another 2 years, another year and a half, if there's regulations saying that they have to stop what they're doing. So that's I guess not having regulations is a positive impact in those cases.
I think it goes back to ethically, yes, there should be some type of regulation, and because we don't want robots to take over like iRobot, but we don't want to stop the advancement of technology and all that it is helping, because it's helping in medicine, it's helping our cars get safer, it's helping because AI isn't just Siri and ChatGPT, it's safety in cars, it's medical advancements, it's all these other really good things that if we do put a hold on it, all those advancements stop.
But all those things are very great, but a lot of what you just mentioned, there's a lot of risk involved with those things. So we know from our experiences with ChatGPT and Gemini and stuff, it can give you wrong information. It can tell you the wrong thing or lead you down a wrong path. Or in the early days of ChatGPT, it would just make stuff up.
Oh, that was my favorite.
You would, you saw it all the time on the internet. You'd read a blog article about something and it'd give you this little snippet, and then you look it up and it's like, that is a made up fact with a made up reference with
a made up stat.
That was my favorite.
Which is great for us. But do you want that type of risk in someone who's using a tool to diagnose make a cancer diagnosis for you?
Well, no.
Or reading your blood work.
Help do your surgery, blood work, stuff like that.
Well, that goes back to it can take you here.
Right.
Human element has to take you here.
Right, and that's understandable. But without regulations telling them that they can't do that they do have to keep the human element, because if there are no regulations for it and a company comes up with a super cheap, super available technology that can help diagnose cancer patients or whatever, that's fantastic, and that's great. But if there's no regulations on it, who's to say that they did their due diligence in making sure that the risks are averted, right? Like, does it keep HIPAA information secret? Does it make mistakes? Like, what's its acceptable percentage? I will. Give me a sec. I'm cooking. What's its acceptable range of failure, right? So like, there's probably a standard for that in the medical industry. Like, this is the acceptable range of a doctor being wrong. without regulation saying that AI has to be held to those same standards. It's up to the company that's making it based on cost time analysis. It's not based on like the life of the human that's going to be diagnosed. It's based on, we have this much time and this much money. What's the acceptable risk in our eyes, not in the patient's eyes? Where that human element comes in, and the doctor is the one that says, well, this is the acceptable risk because that's the standard I'm held to. Mm-hmm. That's what, my organization and the laws govern me to say. But without regulation, the AI isn't under those same constraints. Right. Okay. So I'm done. You can talk. Go ahead.
So I hate paying to go to the doctor. It's for something stupid. I just hate going. Mm-hmm. So I resort to the internet. And I know there's not necessarily, quiz is the wrong word, but there's like these apps and,
questionnaires.
Do you have this? And then you fill out the questionnaire and it's like, yeah, you do have, syphilis 2.0. I don't have that. I'm just making up a disease, but
what a disease to choose.
This is 2.0
for your example.
2.0 too.
But it goes, yep, you got it. And you're like, oh, crap. And then you're like, and then you're telling your family, yeah, I have it. And they're like, who told you? And they're like, the web.
The internet. I went to WebMD.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're like, no, go to a doctor.
Go to a doctor.
So, but
get a professional opinion or a second opinion.
So I'm saying like AI is already using, they're like, okay, I'm taking your questionnaire or whatever it is and going, okay, yes, you answered all of these questions, you have it. When in reality, enough background knowledge is not being taken.
Likely Google and Bing are finding those pages and removing them from, because those type of,
according to them, I'm done.
Yeah. And this is all assuming, going back to like my whole conspiracy theory thing, this is all assuming that a company is not developing a replacement doctor. Mm-hmm. Right? So like we talk about keeping the human element and making sure that that's there, and like the responsibility on the doctor to make sure that the tools are used appropriately. But since hospitals are money-making businesses as well, mm-hmm. if there's a product that comes out that is AI that can replace a doctor in some of these, a diagnostician, like a house, mm-hmm. House MD, I love that show, can replace that thing, then that AI is no longer, there is no human element to it anymore, right? Because we've now removed that because it's cheaper to have that AI. And then those risks were not accounted for because there were no federal regulations saying this is how you should build that software, or federal regulations saying that this should be allowed to be done in the first place, replacing a doctor with an AI diagnostician.
But how far away are we away from that?
We don't know because there's no regulation saying that any of that information has to be.
How
and
far
we're not doctors.
And we're not.
No, I'm saying how far. Like, yes, I've seen like the TikToks and like the YouTube videos of people testing out like robots that look like humans and their knowledge and everything, and like the chat or the Gemini simulation videos where it was drawing a duck and it was AI was, but it seems like we're so far away from a robot doctor. We're away from self-driving cars. Because there's so many errors right now.
Right.
The data's not there yet.
Those are the things that they're showing consumers. They're not showing those things. We're consumers, right? We're not like the businesses in those areas in closed door discussions with OpenAI or Google. What can your AI do in my industry for my company specifically? So we don't see, like, we just see what they're working on. Those are like their playthings. Those are their examples for the consumers to understand things. There is all two years ago, an AI was already developed. It isn't a robot. It doesn't have a human face. It doesn't do any of that. It's like a machine or something already developed that was diagnosing. I don't remember what they were diagnosing, but they were diagnosing humans, probably syphilis 3.0.
3.0.
Oh.
They were already diagnosing diseases in people with huge accuracies, being double checked by doctors, but like they were very accurate in what they're doing, and that was years ago. So where are they at right now that there's been a couple of years to develop that stuff? We don't know.
So what I'm hearing is I need to put in my resignation here at Moonello, and I'm going to go on tour and find all these robots and start my own
self-driving
series
cars. Right.
of robots in real life.
You
And
can call it Robots Replace Monica. It's going to be great.
I'm kidding, by
Can
the
we
way. I love my
produce
job.
it?
Was it Judy from the Jetsons? What was the maid from the Jetsons?
Judy was the wife.
Yeah.
The maid was a
I
robot.
thought it was Jane, his wife.
Oh, you're right. Maybe
Yeah.
it was Judy
His daughter?
your son, Elroy?
I know, I'm like trying to sing the
And
song.
Jane, your wife? I think it's Judy.
Robot name from the Jetsons. F it. We're doing it
Rosie.
live. Rosie.
Rosie.
Judy was
yeah.
the other daughter.
Yeah.
I
And she had a little rose on her apron.
Well, I don't remember that detail. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I would say pretty soon are the days of, you know, having something like this, whether it's like a, you know, as tall as a normal human being or something smaller, something that rolls around, right, that helps with minor sweeping, right, minor stuff, helping with, you know, keeping your calendar updated, you know, getting stuff ready.
Roomba.
But that's not like an AI thing. That's
Right,
using radar detection or whatever.
right. But I mean, Roomba has kind of started that,
Yeah.
right? Like it now
A
analyze.
next logical leap would be
Right,
Yeah.
right.
According to the Jetsons, we have until 2062 to make that a reality. That's
Okay.
when the Jetsons has predicted it.
We're close.
Yeah.
You're going off the wrong TV show. Isn't it The Simpsons? They're the ones that predict everything.
You're right. But you know, you make so much content for 20 years, you're bound to make up some stuff that's going to happen.
Right.
But it's kind of freaky how much they've predicted.
You're kind of right. I understand.
So predictions: how soon before we start to see regulations in the federal government, and we'll end on this.
It's probably a good end note. My guess is I have no idea. I mean, just the fact that maybe it's my own thing is they're so caught up in trying to regulate TikTok that they don't want to regulate AI. But I don't see it really happening anytime soon.
I think as soon as an American company sells a product to a non-American government or entity that has far-reaching or potentially negative effects on the United States is the first time that happens. So like a company sells something to China, or China invests in one of the American companies that's doing things. As soon as that starts to happen, just like the TikTok thing, I think that's the kick in the pants that would be needed. Or a complete replacement of a giant portion of the job sector.
Or
is
like
when that
something
happens.
really, really, really
Yeah.
bad happens.
But by then it's
Right.
too late because
Well,
something
yeah.
bad has already happened. So like
But isn't that like a trend that we see with like laws is like something really bad happened.
What
Okay,
I'm
let's
s-
make a law against it.
yeah, what I'm saying and what you kind of alluded to is by the time they do it, it's already after a bad thing has happened.
Yeah.
Is my
Right.
prediction. So
Right. It's always reactive. Right.
10, 15 years.
Like when social media first came out, and everyone was like, "Wow, this is wild," and it was kind of like the wild, wild west. Is when, you know, things started to happen. Right. You know, kids started to see things they shouldn't have been seeing.
Right.
That's when regulation kind of stepped in. Right. And I
Yeah.
believe it's going to be the same. You know, the very first major lawsuit that happens, the very first, you know,
Yep.
catastrophe that happens. You know.
And with social media, we're still not at the point where we're regulating
Fully
it
regulate.
and
Yeah.
knowing what the regulations should be like.
Right.
Because each app has its own regulations. And then they have their state regulations and then they have their federal regulations. And whether if they want to follow that or not. Even though something is federally illegal doesn't mean you cannot post it or talk about it, depending on the
Yeah.
platform.
And
And
I-
then
Right.
how many eyes are going to see it before it does get deleted or banned or your account gets shut down.
And it's not just about the content that you see, but also the effect that social media has on developing kids, right?
Oh yeah.
We don't know. Right now we don't know what effect that's going to have on future generations. So the regulations aren't necessarily there because we don't know that it's a bad thing yet. We could find that our entire generation, or more appropriately, probably the generation behind us, the millennials, we may find that being raised on technology, social media specifically, is like causes a huge damper to society or to innovation or their ability to do something a certain way. And I'm not saying that that's the case or that all millennials have a problem or something like that, but we don't know what effect that has on their adult lives yet. Or the generation before them.
I've actually heard a lot of the younger generation, while they are on social media and use a lot of technology, a lot of them are starting to revert back to the no technology. So to
is
your
that their parents, or is that just
I have no
their
idea.
thing?
Like I so
just like off the grid, because as they were kids and
they,
young teenagers, they were just so infused in it because the parents were so infused in it.
Right.
So that's all they've basically
backing up.
they basically have just
so maybe
kind of like how I don't like country music because that's all that my parents listened to when I was a kid.
So bringing it back to
all right
to AI,
that's a hot
we're
topic.
saying you know what, maybe in the next 20-30 years we're going to make so much advancement, but as those people that are making the advancements die off because they're getting older, while the newer generation comes in, and if they're so anti-technology, is that innovation going to stop? Leave you on that tidbit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
We're dreaming of dystopian universes here.
Very good discussion, you two. You did great.
Yeah, maybe next time we'll let you talk. Sorry, Matt.
You guys just had so much to talk about on this topic. It was great.
Yeah.
Sorry. Blame it on his tangent forever
sorry.
ago.
You've got knowledge. It's available to be shared, right?
What we've learned is we need to make episodes based on my tangents.
We'll start lining them up. We got a lot of work to do.
Oh yeah.
I got a lot of them.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks for tuning in.
And follow us on every single social media platform because we are on them at We Are Moonello.
And goodbye.
Goodbye.